It was a bitter, freezing morning on March 18, 1945, just outside the small German village of Nieder-Wurzbach. The men of Fox Company, 180th Infantry Regiment, 45th Infantry Division, had been pushing hard through the final stretch of the war in Europe. Their objective was to crack the Siegfried Line, the Germans' last major defensive barrier. A terrifying network of concrete pillboxes, deep trenches, and interlocking fields of fire designed to make any advance a suicide mission. These weren't flimsy field fortifications. The pillboxes were massive, poured concrete bunkers with walls several feet thick, narrow firing slits that gave the defenders perfect cover while exposing attackers to murderous crossfire. Machine guns chattered from multiple angles. Snipers picked off anything that moved, and occasional artillery rounds crashed down to keep everyone pinned. The ground in front was open, almost completely devoid of cover. Just a gentle, exposed hillside covered in short grass that offered no concealment at all. The company had been stalled at the base of this hill for hours, taking intermittent shelling and constant small arms fire. The Germans up there had the high ground, perfect observation, and interlocking sectors that meant no matter which way you tried to approach, someone was always covering you. Attempts to maneuver or suppress the positions had failed, and the frustration was building. The men were cold, exhausted, and watching their buddies get hit without being able to push forward. That's when the decision came to try a direct assault on one of the key points. A squad of 8 soldiers was ordered to rush forward and take out a single pillbox that was anchoring the defense on that flank. They moved out, weapons ready, trying to cross that deadly open ground as quickly as possible. But the moment they left cover, the hill erupted. Machine guns opened up from the slits. Rifles cracked, and within seconds the entire group was cut down. Every single one of those 8 men became a casualty. Some killed outright. Others wounded and lying exposed, screaming for help that couldn't come without more men dying to reach them. The rest of Fox Company watched in horror as their comrades fell, one after another, on that bare slope. The fire was so intense and so well coordinated that no one could even crawl out to drag the wounded back. The company was effectively pinned, unable to advance, unable to retreat without abandoning the position entirely. Morale was dropping fast. The Siegfried Line had already claimed plenty of lives that winter, and this felt like another unbreakable wall. In the middle of all this chaos stood First Lieutenant Jack Treadwell, the company commander. He was only 25, but he'd seen enough combat to know the score. He'd already tried everything standard doctrine suggested. Artillery support when available, suppressing fire, flanking attempts. But nothing had worked. Now, with his men hunkered down, taking casualties without progress, and that hillside still spitting death, he realized the situation was hopeless unless something drastic changed. The Germans weren't going to make a mistake. They were dug in too well. Someone had to break the deadlock. And it couldn't be another squad charge that would just add more bodies to the slope. Treadwell looked up at those concrete domes glinting in the pale light, felt the weight of his Thompson submachine gun and the grenades on his belt, and made the call that would define the rest of his life. He wasn't going to send more men into that meat grinder. Instead, he stood up, alone, and started walking straight toward the nearest pillbox. Out in the open. No cover. No crawling, just deliberate steps into the face of everything the Germans could throw at him. With his men still pinned down, watching helplessly as the wounded from that failed squad lay bleeding on the open slope, First Lieutenant Jack Treadwell made the kind of decision that separates legends from the rest of us. He wasn't going to order another group forward into certain death. He wasn't going to wait for more artillery that might never come or try some clever flanking move that the Germans had already covered. Instead, he grabbed his Thompson submachine gun, loaded and ready, stuffed extra magazines and a pocketful of grenades into his gear, and simply stood up. No dramatic sprint, no low crawl to minimize the target. He just started walking. Deliberate, upright steps. Straight across that bare, bullet-swept hillside toward the nearest pillbox. Bullets cracked past him immediately. Machine gun bursts stitched the ground at his feet, kicking up dirt clods. Snipers zeroed in, rounds whipping by his head. Artillery shells might have been falling nearby. But he kept moving. Eyes locked on that concrete monster about 50 yards ahead. Its narrow firing slit glowing with muzzle flashes. The Germans couldn't believe what they were seeing. One man, alone, no cover, no support, coming right at them like he owned the place. Treadwell didn't duck or zigzag. He kept his pace steady, firing short bursts from the Thompson as he closed the distance. Rounds hammering the concrete around the aperture to keep the defenders' heads down. When he got within grenade range, he yanked a pin, cooked it for a second to make sure it would explode inside, and lobbed it perfectly through the slit. The blast echoed inside the bunker. Screams, smoke pouring out. He reached the pillbox wall, pressed his back to the cold concrete for a heartbeat, then shoved the muzzle of his Thompson right through the firing port. He squeezed the trigger, spraying the interior until resistance stopped. 4 Germans stumbled out, hands high, dazed and terrified. 1 more was dead inside from the grenade and bullets. Treadwell waved them toward the American lines. Prisoners already. And didn't pause. He turned and kept going, straight to the next pillbox maybe 40 yards away. The Germans were in chaos now. Their interlocking fire was disrupted. Some positions couldn't shoot without risking hitting their own. But the fire kept coming. Intense, desperate. Treadwell ignored it, firing and grenading again. He captured the German commander of the hilltop defenses in the second bunker. A blow that shattered their coordination even more. He sent that officer back with the others, then pressed on. One after another, he hit them. 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. Each time the same brutal routine. Advance under fire. Suppress with the Thompson, grenade the slit, close in, force surrender or kill those who resisted. He never ran, never crawled. He walked, like the danger was just background noise. By the time he'd cleared the 6th pillbox, he'd taken 18 prisoners total, neutralized the entire hilltop strongpoint single-handedly, and broken the deadlock that had held up the whole company. His men, watching this whirlwind of courage unfold, finally found their moment. Inspired. Electrified, really. They surged forward behind him, overwhelming what little resistance remained and securing the position. Treadwell's one-man offensive hadn't just saved lives. It had turned a stalled attack into a breakthrough, driving a wedge right into the heart of the Siegfried Line. As the smoke slowly cleared from the 6th pillbox and the last echoes of gunfire faded across that scarred hillside, something almost unbelievable had happened. First Lieutenant Jack Treadwell stood there, breathing hard, his Thompson still warm in his hands, surrounded by the concrete tombs he'd just cracked open one by one. 18 German prisoners shuffled down the slope toward the American lines. Some shell-shocked, others simply stunned that they were still alive. The hilltop that had seemed impregnable minutes earlier was now quiet, its interlocking fields of fire broken, its defenders either dead, wounded, or marching into captivity. Fox Company, which had been pinned and bleeding for hours, finally got the signal they needed. The men rose from their cover, surged forward behind their lieutenant, and swept over the crest. What had been a killing ground became an advance route. The breakthrough Treadwell created didn't just save his company from further slaughter. It punched a real hole in this sector of the Siegfried Line, letting follow-on units pour through and keep the momentum rolling toward the Rhine. In the final desperate months of the war, when every yard cost blood, one man's refusal to accept stalemate had turned deadlock into decisive progress. Treadwell himself barely paused to catch his breath. He waved his men on, checked that the prisoners were secured, then moved to link up with the rest of the battalion. He didn't make a speech or pose for photos. He just kept doing his job. But word of what he'd done spread fast through the 180th Infantry and beyond. Officers and enlisted alike were talking about the lieutenant who actually walked, through machine gun fire 6 times, grenading bunkers like it was routine, capturing an enemy commander in the process, and coming out the other side without a scratch serious enough to stop him. The official after-action reports were almost clinical in their detail, but the eyewitness accounts carried the real weight. Men who'd watched from the base of the hill described it as something out of a movie. Except this wasn't scripted, and the bullets were real. They saw rounds snap past his head, saw dirt explode around his boots, saw him keep coming anyway. One soldier later said it best. He didn't run because he knew if he ran, they'd kill him. He walked because he knew they couldn't stop him. Single quote. For his actions that March morning near Nieder-Wurzbach, Jack Treadwell was awarded the Medal of Honor, the nation's highest decoration for valor. The citation spelled it out plainly. Disregarding his own safety, he fearlessly advanced alone, neutralizing 6 enemy pillboxes, capturing 18 prisoners, and enabling his company to continue its advance. It was one of those rare cases where individual courage didn't just save the day. It literally changed the tactical picture. Treadwell went on to survive the war, returned home, lived a long life, and passed away in 1977. But his story never really faded. It's still taught in military classrooms as an example of what happens when leadership, audacity, and sheer guts collide with an impossible situation. In the end, the Siegfried Line wasn't broken by overwhelming firepower or perfect planning alone. It was cracked open by a 25-year-old lieutenant who decided that if no one else could do it, he would. And that's the thing about moments like this in war. They remind us that even the most fortified defenses, the most hopeless positions, can fall to one person who refuses to look away. Jack Treadwell didn't just kill his way through 6 bunkers. He proved that sometimes the difference between stalemate and victory is a single step forward into the fire.